Hi, so today we have with us Sanjoy Hazarika, who's written River Traveler Journeys on the Sangpo Brahmaputra from Tibet to the Bay of Bengal. Hello.
Hi, Manjula.
So, the Brahmaputra is such a huge river. And so I was wondering straight off the bat when I saw this book, how did you decide to take on this huge task, you know, of writing about this magnificent river?
Well, it's been a lifelong fantasy almost, because I'm Assamese.
Yes.
I didn't grow up with the river next to me, but since I grew up in Shillong, the schooling and so on, it was always there in our consciousness, my consciousness, family's consciousness. It's there in the music that you hear and the stories that you hear. So I just thought of it as an idea that I would love to do. I wasn't sure whether I'd able to do it, but first we started with the film. So Jahanu Boro and I we worked on this film,
Mm.
which enabled us to travel from Tibet in a way to the Bay of Bengal, and that really inspired me. The fact that we were able to do it through three countries and with many challenges on the river and off the river, shall we say, that made me feel that there is a book that can be written because you can't write a book about the Sangpo Brahmaputra without going to Tibet. And there are quite
Mm.
a few books which have come out like that. And I felt,
Mm.
the river is the traveler.
Mm.
We are just, you know, immersed in its spectators. We travel on it, but the real traveler is the river. And to document it and try and understand it, one has to make a little effort, a substantial effort actually, to do.
Mm.
Yeah. So it was always to me fascinating from childhood. I mean, one of the first sights I remember as a child is being, I think my father and my brother were with me, and possibly my mother were in the car and in Guwahati, and you could see these dolphins dancing in the river. I still
Oh,
remember this. I think I was 6 or 7 at the time, and
wow.
you still see dolphins dancing in the river, but you have to go some distance from cities like Guwahati, which are extremely polluting and so on. So yeah, that
Yeah.
intrigued me. Then also I had a role in protecting the dolphin. You know,
Mm.
I write about it in the book.
Yes.
Trying to end the poaching and the government coming on board and supporting that effort and drafting the law that ultimately made it the state aquatic animal. I mean, I
Mm.
had a role, but the main
Mm.
role was in training the poachers to become conservationists.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I've been to Guwahati like a couple of years ago, and like you mentioned, the because of the highway and everything, the cutting down of trees, and there's dust in the air, and also on the way to the airport, like you mentioned that, I remember looking at it, and I didn't know it's called, Beal. I just said these wetlands, they seem to be encroached upon, and it's exactly what you were saying. I said, oh, but I'm not a local, so I don't know what the intricacies of this are. But you mentioned that, and throughout the book there's this, I mean, I know all of us have it, this ecological grief, right? About the state of what's happening to our well, to nature around us, and how, I mean, when one was growing up, it was much more pristine, but we were also a poorer nation then. So, you touch upon all this, so, and also on how it's going to impact us later, because I mean, we're very foolish in thinking that it's not going to retaliate, right? So let's talk about that, which it's a point that you touched on.
Well, it's impacting us already. What you
Yes.
saw, what we see almost every day as we travel by the river or on it is visible and stark. Uh, but it's not just what's happening to the river; it's what's happening to us. I
Yes.
think that is what is happening to us is reflected in the way we respond to the world around us, and it's
Mm.
not a happy situation. You have sand mining from the river, which is banned. You have situations where there's a lot of pollutions, effluents which are released into the river without control, whether it's from the fertilizers and pesticides in the tea gardens and so on, commercial properties along the river. Or you have these factories which are coming up or have come up, which are also not watched closely and dump stuff into tributaries and wetlands and so on. There's a lot of construction which is taking place on wetlands, which is the last place to build construction, especially in a highly seismic zone. Those are the first things that will
Mm.
fall apart. So all this is there. I mean, but I also write about the way some people are fighting, not just fighting back, but building communities of eco warriors. Like you have this
Yes.
young biologist, scientist, who is known as the stork lady,
Mm.
Purnima
Yeah.
Devi Burman. I mean, she has built this, what's called the stork army, the Hargila army, and
Mm.
brought the only person I know who has actually brought a species from the verge of extinction to a space where it is not completely safe but much more protected. you know
Mm. Mm.
so
Yeah.
you have people like these eco warriors who are there, and they are the people that the government needs to be talking to, that communities need to build their stories around, that the media needs to nuance and understand instead of just going one way or the other. So yeah, there is a lot of grief and a lot of pain when you see trees which are 100 years or more being cut down. For instance,
Mm.
you take the building of highways. Two
Yeah.
lane to four lane to six lane. I mean, do you really need a six lane? Do you really need a four lane? I mean, your Char Dham Rasta
Oh
in
God.
the Himalayas, that is a
Yeah.
classic example. The gods don't want to be disturbed. So why are you
Yeah.
disturbing them? So every day you'll have avalanches and landslides and people getting swept away. And you're spending more on building that because it's partly an ego trip. I don't know what it is. But on this, the what many people have said to me, and which I've always believed, is that the trees which are by the side of the road, you're expanding the road. Okay, you need to build highways, four lane, okay, but build it around the trees. So the
Yeah.
trees become the verge, the central
Yeah.
verge, and you have money. The government is giving plenty of money for land. You can so acquire the land and build a lane there. No, but you have to cut the trees, which are ecosystem. Each tree is an ecosystem within itself.
Mm.
So, like the sand, we cannot. Sand is the most important and shall we say uh, plentiful commodity on earth apart from
Yeah.
water and air. You have sand. Without
Yeah.
sand we can't do anything. The walls in your home, the floors in somebody's house, the road, everything needs sand.
Yeah.
But you know that's been built up over millions of years. Now I can't expect a guy who's running a dumper and making a few $1,000 for every load to as a survival strategy to be bothered about what happened in millennia. But
Mm.
the system has to protect wetlands and river spaces, ecological spaces that benefit us. Because,
Yes.
for instance, in places like Dibrugarh and so on, I've seen dumpers taking sand out from the side of the bank. Now, that's
Mm.
extremely dangerous for the city because at times of flood, the level of the river is above the level of the city. There's an
Yes.
embankment which protects the city. So you're
Yes.
digging at the root of that, you're going to destroy, or actually, you're potentially creating a situation which is of great danger to the city and its people. So, mindlessness, and ignorance combined with lethargy and incapacity. I think these are
Mm.
things that we need to be concerned about and deal with.
Mm. And of course, this is an aspect of the book that really interested me. I mean, but also I was saying what was fascinating about the book is that its focus on Assamese history, which people who are not Assamese don't know, right? I mean, each part of our country has its own history, and we are like, we've become a nation, but we don't know the histories of each different part. And the Assamese history was fascinating, and I'm so glad you explained that. And so let's talk about that and how it's closely connected with the Brahmaputra, of course.
Well, I think for me, the fascinating part was not just the Assam segment, but also the parts where it flows through, the river comes through Tibet
Yes,
and
Arun.
to Arunachal and to Bangladesh and then into the Bay of Bengal. And to me, there were figures that I didn't know I had seen on my travels. There was a
Mm.
graveyard of somebody called Rosh. I said,
Yes.
who the hell is this Rosh character in Gwalpara? These
Yeah.
are tombstones of his children. I said, who was this character? Then, of course, you get busy with life, you forget about it. But then when I was writing the book, I said, I must find out who this character is. And it turned out to be somebody who served in the Prussian army, who'd come to India, became a salt merchant. He controlled the import of salt. And at one
Mm.
time, he and a Frenchman decided to overthrow the kingdom of the Ahoms because they weren't being paid for their trade. So he raised a group of mercenaries and went to overthrow the kingdom. Of course, they didn't succeed because the British sort of told them, we'll just scuttle your entire trade if you go ahead like this. But I learned a lot of things just through simple research. And I'm so grateful to my own team, who some of whom went out of the way to discuss the issues, to research the issues for me if I couldn't go to the space myself. So I found that a very interesting story to build a history around, which is not
Mm.
really known even to myself.
Mm.
Uh, there are other historians and writers who know perhaps a lot about it, but to me it was really a revelation. And apart from that, there are the well-known stories of how the Ahoms fought the Mughals. But then
Yes.
there's this little-known story of the book starts with how the first Ahom ruler came to Assam.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a it's
Very interesting.
fascinating. It's a
Yeah.
fascinating story of, did
Mm.
he leave because suddenly his brother had a late born child and he didn't want to have a battle of succession? Was there a famine? Anyway, he
Mm.
came and he discovered this wondrous valley. He didn't conquer all of it, but he spent a lot of his time looking for spaces that would grow, that would have you could have wet rice cultivation,
Mm.
because he was carrying seeds, rice seeds with him. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, he was the Ahoms weren't the first to do wet rice cultivation. That was the Boros, who are the perhaps among the original inhabitants of the Assam Valley, the oldest,
Mm. Mm.
the indigenous. But I found it really fascinating that he went from place to place looking for a stable ecosystem that would support wet rice cultivation, because he had to feed his army, he had to
Mm.
feed just his family, but the retinue. And it was, to me, that made a lot of sense. And because we are all, in a way, children of those interventions, I think these are, to me, these the stories I found interesting. I wanted to tell those stories because I didn't know
Yeah.
those stories.
Yeah.
That salt, the Nagas were, in a way, looking at salt,
Yeah.
up in their minds, and it was a very complex process. And they had control of the salt pits. So
Yeah.
these are old stories which we needed to know and revive. And see, I can't write academic stuff. I mean, I can put together a paper or two, but
Mm.
in the flow of a narrative of a book, uh, I write for myself and my editor,
Mm.
but I write so that ordinary people can enjoy it and
Yes.
follow the flow, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story of that king was really, really interested me. And also and I laughed actually. I was laughing just now because because the love of rice. I mean, rice eating communities. We can't live without rice. Like, at least eating rice, it's almost tragic if you don't get it. So I felt that, I really felt, I could understand, these people going in search of a place where they could grow rice because it's so important. And we don't think of that now, right? We
No,
don't.
it's embedded in our DNA. I tell the story
Yeah.
of these guys who were at Bellagio, two Bengali fellows, and, and they were getting, bread and this and that. And
Oh my
this
God.
came with these conversations. I'm used to. I lived in different parts of the world, so I can manage. But
Mm.
then, there's a hunger. He says, Dada, we need dal and shorty and jol and bhat. Without bhat, we can't manage. So it's in
Yeah.
our DNA. I mean,
Yeah.
I have diabetes and so on, not too bad. But I told my diabetologist, I've stopped rice and all. He says, Mr. Hazarika, why are you torturing yourself? He's Bengali. Yes, we are from the East. Rice is in our DNA. Please do not deprive yourself.
Yeah.
Medicine, exercise, all this can take care of it. But it's in
Yeah.
our DNA. So yeah, it's in the
So,
DNA stretching from Eastern India right up to Southeast Asia. And of course, towards China and so on. So it's part
and
of
in
the
South India also, of course,
South India, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, sorry.
So, and then, and also like the Tibetan parts were very, fascinating. So you want to talk about that, you know?
Yeah, Tibet, a lot of it is, of course, drawn from my own personal experience. The book, the
Yes.
first
Yes.
chapter opens as the plane lands in
Yeah.
Gongar Airport,
Yeah.
and you're confronted with a flood next to the airport. I mean,
Mm.
who hears of floods in Tibet? When
Yeah.
did anyone read about a flood in Tibet? But then
Yeah.
we came across this time and again, and it was truly an extraordinary journey that taught me many things. I learned many things, but it teaches you humility about your place on earth and your place as far as this great entity, this river, is concerned. Because
Mm.
I remember walking down, stumbling down to the foot of a small gorge from the
Mm.
road, and the river it was a stream, a furious stream with a few
Mm.
other smaller streams dropping into it, flowing full belt. And
Mm.
you're standing there and you're looking up thousands of feet, because above the road also the mountain rears thousands of feet. And he said, okay, here I am in this year, and this has been going on for millennia. It's been
Yeah.
carving this road through the rock and cliff for millions of years, and we presume to be so powerful as to block, to control, and so on. I hate that word control when it comes to nature and rivers particularly. So yeah, that was a good lesson in the way that we are not just we are small, but we are infinitesimal, whatever the word, infinitesimally small.
Yes.
Not even a decimal. Uh,
Mm.
and I think that the power that exists in those places, holy places in Tibet, is also something that affects you, because it's there all around you. You can sense it.
Mm.
And there are many things you can't explain. I talk in the book about an experience in a chapel, a monastery, a chapel of a monastery in Tibet,
Mm.
when it's the statue of one of the founders of Tibet,
Mm.
converted
Mm.
Buddhism and so on, he and his two queens. And I couldn't walk past the threshold because it's like a force is pushing back
Mm.
at you. I mean, and I know that others in my team felt the same thing. So there are many things about Tibet which are quite unique and remarkable. The Chinese are doing their best to, of course, disrupt, destroy, and demolish, including building infrastructure, which is
Mm.
going to impact the permafrost and so on. But another thing that I thought about, you know, is the scale of the place. Nothing really prepares you for the scale of Tibet. It's
Mm.
like I remember this one visual because I took a photo of it. You're standing on this road which is going as straight as an arrow to the horizon. There is no deviation, just straight as far as the eye can see. On one side, buckwheat, you have mustard, yellow mustard, and you have the river.
Mm.
On the other side, more fields, and then the hills, the mountains, snow, sand, everything.
Mm.
And, is that saying, you hold infinity in the palm of your hand,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
eternity in our river. So it's summed up, again, the scale of things. And people are very proud of their culture, their traditions, their practices. When I went, at least, we met people who are prostrating themselves and doing the pilgrimage
Yeah.
on the roads, not just in front of monasteries. On the roads, they were doing it. Then you have balladeers,
I
people.
was fascinated by that. Like, that's such an arduous pilgrimage to do.
Yeah, and they manage in on very little. I mean, basically they carry a little food and they depend on other people to feed them because of the
Mm.
not just of the goodness of their hearts, but because others also believe that this is something that helps your karma. And
Yes, I'm sure.
yeah,
Mm.
so there are many things about Tibet which were remarkable, spectacular, and truly humbling, I think.
So let's talk about, the huge dam they're building, right? The Chinese are building what is it called? The Mog. What is it? The huge that's being planned in
In
Tibet.
the in the Namcha Barwa Gorge, yes.
Yes, yes. So what if they actually do it? What's going to happen to all of us? I mean, downstream, we are going to get really.
Well, I don't know if that's going to affect us as much as it's going to affect Tibet, because
Yeah.
rivers have a right to run free, I think.
Yes.
And this is perhaps among the most ecological, sensitive, and rich spaces of the Brahmaputra's flow. There's a tropical rainforest there, okay? I mean, not many
Hmm.
people know this. In Tibet,
Hmm.
in that
How?
deepest valley
There's a
on the face
tropical
of the earth,
rainforest.
it's the deepest
Wow.
gorge, so not you won't get just a few, plants and all that, but you have many creatures, great and small, as well as many plants of all species. You have different climatic zones in that space, and
Just in
it's a
that space, in that gorge.
in that gorge, yeah.
Wow.
And I think an important thing that people tend to forget is that the river, the Chinese plan to build this by 2035. The
Hmm.
Chinese, once they say something, they ultimately end up doing it, whether
Yeah.
it's 3 Mile Gorge or that one on the Yangtze or the one here. But that led to a lot of displacement. Here, there's very little displacement of people, but
But
there is of ecological systems. That's one.
hmm.
Second thing is, how much water are you going to block? Well, it's not going to be because the water comes at great speed. The
Hmm.
idea is to generate electricity and let the water through. So it's
Hmm.
not that they're going to trap the water. My understanding is they're not going to trap the water because the pressure will be too much on the dam. So
Hmm.
the water will be flowing. But so that is something we need to also understand. But the thing that many people don't seem to get is that when you dam a river for power, you have to clean it. You can't let sediment and rocks and stones come in. So what
Yeah.
we are having is actually the purification of the river of its natural chemical nutrients. So
Hmm.
the water that's released is actually cleaner than it came in. It will
Hmm.
accumulate a lot of debris and stuff as stable as what do you call it, sediment as it goes along. But you've taken out a key element of the enrichment of the river, which feeds into ecosystems, not just ecosystems. I mean, fish, the dolphins downstream in Assam
Yeah.
and Bangladesh, the sediment, shall we say, the silt feeds
Hmm.
the farms, because a
Yeah.
lot of the farms downstream, especially in Assam, are organic. There is
Mm.
some. Assam has the lowest use of fertilizers and pesticides, except on the tea gardens and on
Mm.
some of the lowlands. So all that is going to be affected, the productivity of the land as well as everything else. So the Chinese say that they're not going to, it's not going to affect the flow of the river, but it is, you know.
Yeah.
And what they finally do with it is one doesn't know, because in the early 1990s, about 33 years ago, 1982, I think it was Nature published an article saying that they were planning to tunnel through the Himalaya and build through the plateau and divert the water. Then they said, no, 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 there are no such plans. But this dam idea was, the Medoc Dam was always there. And many thought that, even I thought that maybe they won't do it. But they've been planning this for some time, and they plan very well, unlike in other parts
Mm.
of the world, including
Yeah.
downstream riparians. Now, we are saying that we'll build a dam to contest the Chinese dam.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
I don't know how that helps people downstream, or any of the species that live downstream, the non-human species, which is
Mm.
fish and all that.
But you
So
also mentioned, which now more people are saying, about how the idea of dams itself. I mean, so many countries are decommissioning their dams, right? Like the US. So, I mean, the future is unknowable, right? I mean, anything because of the earthquake prone zone. So, building these huge dams could really have a bad effect, right? Going
yeah,
forward.
because water is very heavy.
Yeah.
Storage of water is very heavy. The dam itself will be very heavy at that point. It's a
Hmm.
highly seismic zone, and now you have these threats by all these world leaders to start testing nuclear weapons again. Now, you
Yeah.
test nuclear weapons in non-human habitat areas. The
Yeah.
French were doing it in the Pacific, and I
Yes.
think the Russians were doing it, I don't know where, somewhere else, and the Americans were had their own space. Now, all
Yeah.
these have impacts on a very not unstable, but on a fairly fragile crust, you know, which
Yes.
may speed up pressures. I mean, I see Putin said something about we can create a tsunami like situation by testing. I mean, these are not empty threats. These are very major issues which, the UN seems completely incapable of doing anything. And the
Yeah.
neighbors, other countries, are either too scared or unable also to do much. Because if America and the Russians start testing, I don't think the Chinese will be far behind.
That's true.
So
Hmm.
this may not have much to do with what you're asking me, but I'm just diverting from the theme of the book. But these are all issues that I'm sure concern all of us. Certainly, they concern me.
Yes. So, I was also quite interested in those hospitals which had a hand in setting up, right? The river hospitals or the boat, um,
Both
or
clinics.
the boat clinics on the Brahmaputra. So let's talk about that because before, I mean, what were people doing? They were getting on the boats and going to far off places, right, from the chars and stuff. So, what? They would just die if they couldn't get to a hospital fast enough, like that woman who did die in childbirth, right? Was that what
Yeah.
was happening? There were no hospitals in, I mean, they can't be, right? If it's like the islands are constantly coming and going, how would you?
Yeah, so that's the worst case scenario, the one that I learned about while
Mm,
on
mm.
the same ferry that she died on.
Yes.
And uh, at other in other situations, the local people get her onto the family or the individual onto a boat and go to the nearest space,
Mm,
and then
mm.
they have to get a vehicle to take the person, the woman, to the hospital, which may not be
Yeah.
near. So it's
Yeah.
a very complicated space and situation. and our MMR was very high. It was 492 per 100,000 lakh live births, which was the worst in India, among the worst, I
Oh.
think, anywhere.
Hmm.
Uh, and now it's about 120 or so.
Okay.
So it's a huge drop, and we still, I think the government is still trying to improve it. Now, I'm sure we had a small role in that, but the idea behind the boat clinics was, as you said, this young woman that I came across, the story, not the person,
Hmm.
who died in
Hmm.
childbirth while going on a ferry to the hospital on the other side of
Hmm.
the river. There was a hospital, I
Yeah.
mean, a city. And I said that it's really criminal that, and it's not right that a woman has to go through this torture to get access. So that's how the idea of the boat clinics came, that they shouldn't have to go for the service should go to them, especially vulnerable communities who live on islands which are by nature changing entities. Because the flood
Hmm.
comes, the island either gets washed away or it appears somewhere else, or part of it appears somewhere else, and people have to leave at times of high water to seek refuge elsewhere. And then they come back, and the whole process starts again. And that's what how it started, really. But then how do you do it? And I'm not. I'm My family is physicians. My father was a doctor, TB specialist. My brother is a medical specialist. My grandfather, all these people. But I'm just a hack. What does a hack know about these things? So,
Hmm.
but then I thought, why should people have to come for the service? If the service is to go to them, it has to go by boat.
Hmm.
That's the only thing that makes sense. It's not rocket science. It's a boat.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you need to design a boat that will reach people, that will sustain healthcare, that
Hmm.
will, in emergencies, even deliver children, the babies.
Hmm.
And that's how the idea came. We won a small award at the World Bank Marketplace in India, the first one,
Hmm.
2004. Within 7 months, we had the ship, first boat clinic up and running in Dibrugarh in Upper Assam.
Hmm.
And so now we have 15 boat clinics. It's a partnership with the Assam government, the National Health Mission.
Hmm.
Uh, these things have their ups and downs, but essentially they've been funding the whole thing.
Okay.
Uh, because an NGO can only develop pilots. We cannot save the earth. NGOs which think
That's
they're going
true.
to transform the world and save the earth. Maybe they can lead a path, they can shine a light, they can develop a
Hmm.
pilot. But it is a principal stakeholder, which is the government. And I'm very glad the government has sustained this over nearly now 17 years, since 2008. 2000
Hmm.
2005, we started the boat clinic. So it's actually 20 years. And it's
Wow.
25 years of my NGO. So it's a big
Hmm.
it's a big achievement, and it's recognized. It's what started as a field operation has become part of policy. So this
Hmm.
is one way that can be replicated. One method strategy that can be replicated in other parts of the world where there are vulnerable communities living on islands, not just
Yes.
in Assam. Assam, we have 2,500 islands,
Hmm.
and something like uh, about 1/12 of the state's population live on islands. So it's not a small number.
Hmm. But when
Because
when the tide
sorry,
or when there is, sorry, yeah, go
I
on.
can make one point. One thing I realized very early on: if one has to make an impact, you have to have scale. And
Yes.
NGOs don't have the capacity. Most NGOs, because we are not well funded or anything, don't have the capacity. It is the
Hmm.
stakeholder, the government, which has the mandate to do this, that has the capacity, and we need to push them to do it. So they recognized a good idea and they went for it. So that's something
Hmm.
we need to appreciate.
Hmm. Okay, so when you've touched also on, I mean, when you went to the Bangladesh side and you met that guy Karamat, right?
Karamat Bhai, yeah.
Who, pardon me?
Karamat Bhai, yes.
Karamat Bhai, who also, worked in Assam. And, everyone knows like the whole story about, infiltration and the anti-outsider feeling in Assam and all that. And you brought that out, but also how it's kind of impossible to stop, right? I mean, in history, people have been going back and forth. So, but this is a problem or an issue that troubles the modern state a lot. Right. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, migration is the way of the world, no?
Yeah.
All of us are migrants. You're a migrant,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
presume.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a migrant. I've
Yeah.
come back to my birthplace, as it were.
Just like
But
Karamat went back to his birthplace. Right.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing is that, of course, they've got fences to protect ingress and so on. These are all important steps that the Indian state has taken to, and it's got new laws, changed laws. But that doesn't actually impact the thing. There's a perception, and you used actually a word that I don't really agree with: infiltration.
Mm.
Infiltration
I
is
I put it in inverted commas.
yeah, I can't see the inverted commas on audio. But anyway, infiltration is essentially a security term of people who go in as to sabotage systems behind enemy lines. Now,
Yes.
economic migration or environmental induced migration is not like that. These are people who are coming in search of livelihoods in terms of a
Yeah.
safer place to live, to work, and to sustain themselves and their families. It's a basic element of human survival across the world.
Hmm.
Now, at some point, post 71, it becomes a real issue in
Yeah.
Assam. It's been an issue in Assam since the 30s and 40s. It's not,
Yes.
it's nearly 100 years old, this issue of
Yeah, I
outside
had no idea. Your book really puts
migrants.
that out. Yeah.
Yeah, migrants. And it was a campaign issue, a campaign election plank for the Congress party in 1946 47. It won
Hmm. Hmm.
the elections that time on this basis. So there is a real issue. But the thing is, there have been agreements, and we need to abide by those agreements, whether it's the Assam Accord or whatever. Now, people migrate, as I said, for various reasons. Some for political reasons, those are refugees, but mostly for social and economic reasons. And what I've suggested in the past, and this was the National Security Advisory Group, so the subgroup of Mr. Narayanan, who became later the National Security Advisor, myself, and Mr. KPS Gill, former
Hmm.
DG of Punjab, and so on. We developed this system of work permits, designed it and
Hmm.
gave it to the government, saying that you have different color coded work permits. We've got the software that can enable people to come, work, and go back. You just need a
Hmm.
tracking system. You can track
Hmm.
them because they'll have to put their thumbprints or signatures on documents. It's all there. In fact,
Hmm.
I've written a much larger book on it. The problem is in India, we don't have a migration law.
Okay.
You have a citizenship law. You don't have a
Hmm.
migration law. We are not also party to the Geneva Convention, Refugee Convention. None of the countries of South Asia are.
Hmm.
So that's why these problems with Chins and all that coming from Burma, uh,
Hmm.
people from Bangladesh, Chakmas fleeing for protection from the army in Bangladesh,
Hmm.
etc. All this is happening. We don't have a refugee policy. We don't
Hmm.
recognize refugees. We protect them, but also send them back. Even people who are vulnerable. So I think that we need to recognize that neighbors, you can't change your neighbor. Okay, your neighbor
Hmm.
is going to be there for good or bad. It's
Yes.
a question of how you build that relationship. If you have a
Hmm.
good relationship, then you can discuss these things and actually develop a civilized way, formal, good way of building not just goodwill but building the economy of the place. Now, see, we have closed the border to Bangladesh, and I
Hmm.
don't think visas are being issued to people wanting to come from there. Whatever, Bangladeshis are issuing visas, the missions to people wanting to go there. It's pretty one sided, and trade is being blocked at the border in terms of transport and so on. So we are building this navigation channel with a lot of investment on the Brahmaputra to transport stuff. Now, where are you going to transport it? If
Yeah.
you blocked the only only neighbor who you can do trade with, you're not getting your ships are not going there. Then where will you sell your goods?
Mm,
Because
mm.
that would have been the ideal outlet to Southeast Asia. Because a majority of goods across the world is moved by ship
Yes.
on oceans and occasionally on rivers, not by
Mm.
road.
Yeah.
By road, it's a minuscule. By railways, a bit more. But here we are stuck because of this situation. So I think
Mm.
that there's a lot that needs to be done. We need to look at things in a larger issue. Of course, there is the issue of illegal migration and so on. But there are ways of resolving that, which the state is fully cognizant of and has tried to do. But that's not the whole story. You have to see how to, because migrants are the people like all of us, in some way bring energy, skills, and capacity and new efficiencies to the work we do. You
Mm.
look at internal migration, so many people migrate from Bihar, from Kerala, from Assam, Maharashtra, everywhere. They go to
Yes.
other spaces in the country in search of work, livelihoods, partners, etc., education,
Mm. Mm.
and they build something in that. And I think this is one way of creating a better South Asia if we build better relations with our neighbors.
Mm. Okay. And also this, I had no idea that there were pirates on the Brahmaputra. I mean, in the Bay of Bengal, and
Yeah, those are
that was
pretty
quite a,
dangerous. As somebody who survived that, I can vouch for how nerve-wracking it can be, because you can see
yeah.
these large boats, vessels coming from one behind you and a couple on the sides. They're sort of doing a flanking procedure to cut you off. So the
Gosh.
only thing that because ours was a smaller boat,
Mm.
only thing the captain, the pilot and captain of our boat could do is move to shallow water because they can't
Mm.
chase in shallow. These are much bigger, and so I asked, I sort of asked my journalist, what happens if they capture? He says, no, they kill everybody, they steal whatever you have, and then they sink the boat. I said,
God.
I said, I can't swim. Janu Boro also can't swim. I said, Janu, your wife is a champion swimmer. At least she will save you. But there is nothing. So all this is that. So some really extraordinary experiences which shaped my life. Because you don't experience pirates in the 20th century.
Yeah. I was quite
Bucket.
taken aback by that chapter.
You're not as taken aback as I was when we were on the.
Sure. Yeah. Taken aback is an understatement for you. That must have been
Yeah,
frightening.
I was sort of joking about, and he didn't. I don't think John was happy about the thing I said. I said, "Will be a small note in the Times of India, 10th page or something, if we are sunk." You know, so
Yeah.
I don't think he liked that.
So how long did it take you to write this book?
Well, a long time, much longer than anticipated because of all these new things coming up, and there were some challenges. I lost my wife in between, so I had
Hmm.
writer's block for about a year, and frankly, I was doing other things. I got involved in organizations, setting up my own, not just CNS, but I started the first Northeast Study Center in Central
Hmm.
University at Jamia. So that took nearly 8 years of my life.
Hmm.
Then I was at CHRI, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, for 6 years. So that ate into a lot of my time. I could not give enough time. So the book was half written or two-thirds written. And then I got time after leaving Delhi and really finished it in 4 or 5 months. So yeah, the last part was written quickly, but the two-thirds of it took several years.
Mm.
numerous personal and other uh, professional issues.
Yes, yes. And which chapter was the most problematic? Not problematic isn't the right word. Most challenging for you to write.
Well, all of them were challenging. I don't think there was anyone which was more than the other. There was, I think, the one which looked at climate change and to break it down into something that would make sense for myself and for
Mm.
the reader was something that I found a bit challenging. And you basically, as a writer, you know this, you have to work around it. You
Yeah.
don't, if you can't address a situation head on, you just see, we go under it, around it, over it, whatever it is,
Yes.
and explain it in a way that you yourself understand it first, so that you're in a better position to explain it to an audience.
Mm. And are you
Because
working on some?
you have to combine, for instance, what is happening in China with the drying
Yeah.
up the rivers to what was happening in Europe with the Rhine dropping to record low. It was so happened that I was in Germany at the time and I saw some of
Mm.
this happening. Uh, and it's all happening around the same time, but on different continents. So it's the same
Mm.
kind of problem. Just like right now, you're having these torrential rains that are destroying villages, towns, roads in the Himalayas, yes, but
Yeah.
they're also
Yeah.
doing it in South India, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in places like Gujarat and Rajasthan, and now in Kenya, in the Rift Valley. Many people have died in the rains that have lashed the Rift Valley.
Mm.
So this is a phenomenon that is acutely visible across the world. So how do you reflect on it and understand it better? I've understood it better. It's not that I understand the whole thing, but that's how I try to explain it.
Mm. And also, I mean, like the river itself. I mean, right? It's running right through, but it's you still can't really grasp the enormity of it and how it changes, right? Every time, like in some of your descriptions, there's an island there some at one moment, and then it isn't, or there's a rock which falls down and creates a natural lake, and then things change completely. So let's talk about that. The how unpredictable the Brahmaputra especially is. I mean, all rivers are unpredictable, but this especially so.
I don't know how unpredictable it is, but it is. We are not prepared for it. Is the
Ah,
larger issue,
yes.
specific thing. Because the Brahmaputra will rise, whether it's
Uh-huh.
in May or in June or July, it will rise because of the melting of the snows and the precipitation that falls not just on its sources, which is
Hmm.
some, but also the other rivers. There are 50 rivers that flow into it, and these are not
Yes.
streams. I mean, my
Hmm.
friend Jayanta Bangapadhyay, who was a hydrologist and was on the IPCC panel to look at river issues, uh, he says 50 rivers become 5,000 in the monsoon.
Hmm.
Streams becomes rivers, brooks become streams. It
Yeah.
is like a maze, a network of water that is eh, feeding this giant funnel of
Yes.
a river that is pouring through the heart of Assam. And I remember one thing which helped me understand the scale of the river. I was rafting down the Siang in Arunachal Pradesh,
Hmm.
and at one point we had stopped because the my friend who was taking me wanted to show me something. He says, "Look at the water level. This is just huge rocks, okay, on your side. The water level is about 25 to 30 feet above you. That's about 10 meters. He said that's
My
how
goodness.
much the water rises in the floods. So, where we are, you'll be underwater, by 10
Yeah.
meters, essentially.
Yeah.
So that, I think, helps us understand the scale of the thing, more than anything else. And you realize when you're traveling, like for instance, you travel by boat, when you're on road, it's perhaps there's also visible. But when you're on the river and you're going towards Arunachal Pradesh, You look back and you realize you're on a hill. The river
Mm,
is flowing down a hill, a slope. So you're
mm,
the so it's when it's the boat is going upland, it's actually going uphill. That's why
mm.
it has to struggle longer to. It used to take 9 hours from Dibrugarh to a spot near Arunachal. Coming down, you do it in 6 hours because the speed of the water is with
Yeah,
you. It's like walking into a headwind when flying into a headwind when in a plane. That's a
yeah,
bit how I would describe it. So scale is everything, and in places like Meghnamukh, which is how they call
mm,
it, where the Podda, which is really a combination of the Brahmaputra and the Ganges,
yeah.
Ganga,
Mm,
meets the Meghna. It's
mm,
it's an inland sea.
mm,
The nearest I can see is in Dibrugarh, where you don't see either side. Frankly, here
mm,
also you see lots of boats and ships and ferries and stuff, but you can't make out where the other bank is. So the
mm.
scale is everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Okay, so I could keep talking about this, and even the Arunachal bits are very interesting and very informative because I don't know. I feel like each of these places that you've touched on, there's so much that could be whole volumes can be written, you
yeah,
know. But well, so
for
are
me,
you?
for me that was a challenge. Where do
Yeah.
you stop actually? And that's
Yes.
why I've had a very good editor and publisher. So they've been really very helpful in
Mm.
enabling where to call stop or put in a comma or a
Yeah.
dash.
Yeah, because when I was reading it, it struck me that, everything that you're saying, the whole stories behind it, and some of the stories you've touched on, and there was possibly many things that you had to leave out. So, and now you're
And
saying
one
this.
could have written much more. For instance, the surveyors,
Yeah.
these guys, the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Pandit
pundits.
was the
Yeah.
pundits, but also people like Morzed and
Yeah.
Bailey. Bailey
Yeah.
was basically a spy, and
Yeah.
Morzed was a surveyor who'd been on the Mallory mountaineering expedition
Yeah.
to Everest and so on. And suddenly you find in Malaysia there's a reference to Morzed who died in a very strange incident. He was murdered.
Oh.
He'd end up dead in Malaysia because he had an argument with somebody who he thought was having an affair with his sister. And person, a Nawab, was never tracked, was never really, nothing really happened to him, and nothing was proved. But, it's all very mysterious. And these guys are the guys who charted the Sangpo and found it was the one river.
Hmm.
According to British and Western legend, the Tibetans always knew, no, that
Yeah.
this is Western history that we are talking about, not
Yeah.
Tibetan history. Tibetans always knew where the spaces were, where the rivers were, where the falls were.
Yeah, it's like
Stunning.
the discovery of America. I mean, anyway, so yeah, so I could talk to you a lot more, but we shall end. Are you working on anything else right now? Are you planning to write another book soon? Oh,
Well, I finished a book on Mizoram.
oh,
Could be out. It's at the editing stage. It's been nobody knows much about Mizoram, so I said
oh.
I want to try my hand at a bit of contemporary history. It was actually supposed to be a biography of this figure who was Mizoram's longest serving chief minister, Lalthan Holla.
Ah,
But there wasn't enough material, and I felt that one should use him as a really a pivot to tell the story of contemporary Mizoram, the last 100 years up to 2021 or so, 2018. So yeah, so that should be out in a few months.
oh,
And
excellent.
the one book on Nagaland or on Naga peace worker that I'm working on, and a book of collected stories. I mean,
Okay.
not fiction, but non-fiction stories. I don't like to call them essays because essays has a rather hard academic feel to it, and not many people are interested.
Yeah.
They're collected stories. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So that's
great. So
my
that means I'll be speaking to you again pretty soon. So,
thank you.
for the listeners, go out and get River Traveler Journeys on the Sangpo Brahmaputra from Tibet to the Bay of Bengal by Sanjoy Hazarika. An excellent book, great read, and very informative and easy to read also, though it's like stuffed with a lot of things. So, thank you so much for talking to me. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.